Hey guys, so we are now going to transition out of graphing quadratics, and we're going to start looking at some different ways to work with them. Before we get into solving them, we're going to first look at factoring. Hopefully this will be a really good review of stuff that you've been doing since Algebra 1, so that it's not something new, but it can be just kind of a review. So let's dive right in. The first way of factoring is to look for a GCF, and this is something that really, you should be doing this for every single type of problem that you factor. This should be like number one step. So we're going to look at our two terms here, 7p squared and 21, and we're going to say, what do they have in common? The thing they have in common is a 7. We can divide both of these by 7. So I'm going to put what that GCF is on the outside, and then what I'm thinking about is if I were to take each of these and divide them by 7, what would I be left with? I'd have a p squared plus 3. Now if I double check the inside, there's nothing else that they have in common, so this is my final answer. Now for this one, what would be our GCF? Our GCF is what they have in common, so we're looking at the numbers first. They have a 2 in common. I can divide them both by 2. But in this problem, they also have a w. And the way that I remember it for GCF with variables is that if they have the same variable, is it w or is it w squared is the GCF, whichever one is the smaller exponent. Because you think about if we say that it's w squared, then we are going to try to take out a w squared from this, and it's kind of like overdrawing a bank account. We can't take more than what it has to offer. So it's just 2w. So when I divide each of these by 2w, I'm going to end up with a 2w on the outside because that's what I divided by, or the GCF, and I'm left with 2w on the inside plus, and since 2 divided by 2 is 1 and the w's cancel, I just get 2w plus 1. So that's the basic first step that you should always do whenever factoring. But we're going to look at factoring trinomials today, and we're going to look at only cases where the a value, or the number in front of x squared, is equal to 1. Next lesson we'll look at what happens when that first value is not 1, and I have a different method than maybe other people use, so we'll see. So here are my steps that I follow. First, I draw 2 sets of parentheses, and then I split up my x's. If you have more than one x, you know you don't want them talking to each other. We want to keep them as far apart from each other as possible. So I'm going to split up my x's, keep them separate. Now, I'm going to look for two numbers that first multiply to 8, and they also have to add to 6. So they multiply to the first number and then add to the second number. So if I make a list of what multiplies to 8, I can get 1 and 8 or 2 and 4. Which one of those options adds to 6? 2 and 4. Now, the way that I remember signs is I look at, let's change it to this. I look at this sign right here. When this is a positive, it means that my signs are going to be the same. So either I'm going to have both of these are positive or both of them are negative. And it's going to be whatever this sign is. So in this case, I get plus and plus. The signs are the same. They're both positive. You might have learned a different method. And if you have a different method that worked well for you, go for it. But this is just kind of the logical process that I kind of work through, the steps that I work through to get it. All right, draw my 2 sets of parentheses. That's my first step. Second step, split up my x's. I can do that. Next step is I need 2 numbers that multiply to 12, and what else? They need to multiply to 12 and add to 7. So I have 1 and 12 as an option. I've got 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. And when I look at those, the options that add to 7 are these, 3 and 4. So I'm going to put 3 and 4 here. The last thing is to decide what kind of sign it's going to be. Based on this right here, are the signs going to be the same or different? They're going to be the same, and they're both going to be this sign. So they're both going to be a negative. And that's my final answer. All right, let's look at this one here. First step is to do what? 2 sets of parentheses. And then what? Split up the x's. Now, I need two numbers that multiply to 32, but this time they have to subtract to 14. So I'm going to have 1 and 32. I could have 2 and 16, 4 and 8, and I think that'll do it. So which of those subtract to 14? There it is, 2 and 16. Last step is to decide the signs. So are my signs going to be the same or different? They're going to be different this time because this is a negative, and when they're negative, or when that sign's a negative and they're different, this sign right here goes with the bigger number. So which one's bigger, 2 or 16? 16's bigger, so that minus is going to go with the 16, and then it's different, so the 2 gets the plus. So that is a brief introduction to, or review, to factoring. You have some practice problems that you are going to work through. Hopefully this has helped kind of jog your memory about how to factor. Let me know if you have any questions.